والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا. فردا واتخذوا
من دون الله آلهة ليكونوا لهم عزا كلا سيكفرون بعبادتهم ويكونون عليهم ضدا.
Well done. أحمد.
ألم تر أنا أرسلنا الشياطين على الكافرين تؤزهم أزا.
Well done.
فلا تعجل عليهم إنما نعد لهم عدا. يوم نحشر المتقين إلى الرحمن وفدا ونسوق المجرمين إلى جهنم وردا. لا يملكون الشفاعة إلا من اتخذ عند الرحمن عهدا. وقالوا اتخذ الرحمن ولدا لقد جئتم شيئا إدا. تكاد السماوات
يتفطرن
منه
وتنشق
الأرض وتخر الجبال هدا. أن دعوا للرحمن ولدا وما ينبغي للرحمن أن يتخذ ولدا.
Excellent. ما شاء الله. إكمال كم تقرأ؟ أحمد. إن كله 93. وعدهم عدا. Ludda. You see, the letter dal always has a different. When you come to pronounce the dal, we had a discussion before makharij al-huruf. The dal often gets confused with what letter? With which letter? With that, exactly. So this can come out of your mouth as lutta when it is ludda. So you have to really emphasize the dal. Thank you so much, Yusuf. نعم. وكم أهلكنا؟ الله يفتح عليك يا these tiny mistakes can change meanings, and this is something that is so subtle about the Arabic language, and more particularly the Quranic language. So, a famous example where this mispronunciation can make a big change is Maliki Yawmi Ad-Din. What does that mean? What does Maliki Yawmi Ad-Din mean? The owner, perhaps the guardian of the day of Ad-Din. Ad-Din does not mean religion here. It means, the day of judgment, where everyone gets judged. But if I mispronounce the dal, if I confuse the dal with ta, what does it become? Maliki Yawm Ad-Din. What does Ad-Din mean? Fig. The day or the fig day. Does this make sense? So these tiny mistakes can really change meanings. But thank you for making this mistake so that we can explain this. يا عمرو تفضل. الله يفتح عليك يا عمرو. والله. Is it Ibrahim? Ali. If you don't prefer to recite, it's fine. Okay. Yes, it's verse number 83. Where are you from, Ali? Egypt. Oh, mashallah. ألم ترى أن أرسلنا على الكافرين. In Arabic, and in Quranic Arabic, we have something called Allam al-Shamsiyya. I think we've covered this briefly before. Allam al-Shamsiyya versus Allam al-Qamariyya. Does anyone know the difference between Allam al-Shamsiyya and Allam al-Qamariyya? Any?
الشمسية we don't pronounce.
Exactly. Ash-Shamsiyya is like the lam in the word Ash-Shams. We don't say Al-Shams, we say Ash-Shams, as if there is no lam. Al-Lam al-Qamariyya, we call it Qamariyya mainly because we pronounce Al-Lam in Al-Qamar, Al-Qamariyya. Some people will call it Al-Lam al-Layliyya or Al-Lam al-Nahariyya. As in Al-Layl, we pronounce the lam, in Al-Nahar, we don't pronounce. So Al-Kafirin, the lam here is a lam Qamariyya. We have pronounced Al-Kafirin. Now. Well, inshallah, what we can cover next week is when do we get to pronounce it as Al-Qamariyya and when do we pronounce it as Shamsiyya. Inshallah, we'll cover this next week. فلا تعجل
عليهم إنما
نعد
له حتى يوم محشور
نعم
المتقين إلا الرحمن وفدا ونسوق
yes.
المجرمين إلا جهنم وردا لا يملكون الشفاعة إلا من اتخذ عند الرحمن عهدا.
Well done, yeah. Very good, mashallah. Jamal. لقد جئت
تكاد السماوات يتفطرن منه وتنشق الأرض وتخر الجبال هدا أن دعوا للرحمن ولدا وما ينبغي للرحمن أن يتخذ ولدا.
Excellent, mashallah. Yusuf. عليكم السلام. One more time. Well done.
أحصاهم وعدهم عدا وكلهم آتيه يوم القيامة فردا إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات سيجعل لهم الرحمن ودا فإنما يسرناه بلسانك لتبشر به المتقين وتنذر به قوما لدا وكم أهلكنا قبلهم من قرن هل تحس منهم من أحد أو تسمع لهم ركزا
The last verse one more time.
وكم أهلكنا قبلهم من قرن هل تحس منهم من أحد أو تسمع لهم ركزا
Excellent, mashallah. The ra in Arab is a thick one. تفخم يعني. وكم أهلكنا قبلهم من قرن هل pause on it for a bit to emphasize its thickness. Well, very well done, mashallah. From the sisters' side.
أفرأيت الذي كفر بآياتنا وقال لأوتين مالا وولدا أطلع الغيب أم اتخذ عند الرحمن عهدا كلا سنكتب ما يقول ونمد له من العذاب مدا ونرثه ما يقول ويأتينا فردا واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة ليكونوا لهم عزا كلا سيكفرون بعبادتهم ويكونون عليهم ضدا.
Excellent, yeah, excellent. Other reciters.
ألم تر أنا أرسلنا الشياطين على الكافرين تغزهم
أزا
فلا تعجل عليهم إنما
نعد
لهم عدا يوم
نحشر
نحشر المتقين إلى الرحمن
وفدا
ونسوق المجرمين إلى جهنم وردا لا يملكون الشفاعة إلا من اتخذ عند الرحمن أحدا.
Very good, mashallah. Other reciters.
وقالوا اتخذ الرحمن ولدا لقد جئتم شيئا إدا تكاد السماوات يتفطرن منه وتنشق الأرض وتخر الجبال هدا
وتخر الجبال هدا
أن دعوا للرحمن ولدا وما ينبغي للرحمن أن يتخذ ولدا
للرحمن
أن يتخذ ولدا.
You see the ra in الرحمن is a thick one. وما ينبغي للرحمن
أن يتخذ ولدا.
Excellent, mashallah. Very, very good. Who's that? Zainab. Very good, mashallah. Other voices? لقد أحصاهم وعدهم عدا. أهلكنا. ركزا. Well done, well done. Other reciters? Okay, no problem. Thank you so much for your contributions. Um, this is our last passage in Surah Maryam. And to just give some sort of context to this, in the previous discussions, we looked at, the primary theme of Surah Maryam, as we said, is giving some sort of psychological relief to the Prophet ﷺ at his time in Mecca, when he was having a difficult time. Allah was reminding him that previous messengers did face challenges, and we stood by the side. And as in, you're not alone. This has happened to previous messengers, and the Quran begins by recounting the story of Zakaria alayhi salam, followed by Maryam, Isa, Ibrahim, Ismail, Musa, wa Idris alayhi salam. The last passage in this surah, as you may tell, the way we read it is somehow gives us an insight into what makes those people reject the messages and the messengers. Let's do the translation first, and then inshallah we open the floor for discussion. The first verse we have says, "Have you considered the man who rejects our revelation, who says, 'I will certainly be given wealth and children'? Has he penetrated the unknown or received a pledge to that effect from the Lord of Mercy?" I'm reading from Abdelnour's translation. "No, we shall certainly record what he says and lengthen his punishment. We shall inherit from him all that he speaks of." As I'm reading, we have one central question today. That is, everyone will be asked one question. The question is to pick one word or one phrase out of this entire passage that really captures your attention. So you don't have to come up with like a sophisticated idea or something. Just give me a word or a phrase or a verse that literally caught your attention. And then we take this as a starting point for the conversation, just to give a chance to everyone to speak. And there is no, right or wrong answers to these. We just something that you want to react to. We shall certainly record what he says and lengthen his punishment. We shall inherit from him all that he speaks of, and he will come to us all alone. They have taken other gods beside God to give them strength or security. But these gods will reject the worship and will even turn against them. Have you not seen how we send devils to incite the believers to sin? There is no need for you to be impatient concerning them. We are counting down the allocated time. On the day we gather the righteous as an honored company before the Lord of Mercy, and drive the sinful like a thirsty herd into hell. No one will have power to intercede except for those who have permission from the Lord of Mercy. The disbelievers say, the Lord of Mercy has offspring. How terrible is this thing you assert? it almost causes the heavens to be torn apart, the earth to split asunder, the mountains to crumble to pieces. That they attribute offspring to the Lord of mercy. It does not befit the Lord of mercy to have offspring. There is no one in the heavens or earth who will not come to the Lord of mercy as a servant. He has counted them all, He has numbered them exactly, and they will each return to Him on the day of resurrection, all alone. But the Lord of mercy will give love to those who believe and do righteous deeds. You have made it easy in your own language, so that you may bring glad news to the righteous and warnings to the stubborn people. How many generations we have destroyed before them? Do you perceive a single one of them now, or hear as much as a whisper? What a powerful passage. Again, as I said, you have 1 or 2 minutes to pick one word, one phrase, one verse that you felt this, hit me differently. It meant something for me. حكمت هذه ترجمة الباسج اللي قرأناه بالإنجليزية. هذا المقطع من سورة مريم.
المقطع الأخير؟
نعم اللي احنا قرأناه. نعم. وفي سؤال بنسأله عادة في الدرس لو في آية معينة أو كلمة في هذا المقطع كان لها وقع خاص عليك أو حسيت إن هي
ترجمة تفسير
ترجمة محمد عبد الحليم من أشهر ترجمات القرآن اسمها ترجمة محمد عبد الحليم. عفوا. So as we said, task is to pick one word, one phrase, one verse, whatever you prefer. And you tell me, this hit me differently. You have one minute to think. So, if you go by turn, would you like to share whatever word or phrase or verse, just the word, and then inshallah we discuss it. Yeah,
الشفاعة.
الشفاعة.
لا يملكون الشفاعة إلا من اتخذ عند الرحمن.
So the word الشفاعة or the whole thing? The word الشفاعة.
Let's stay with the word.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Keep in mind, why did you? The next question would be, why did this, capture your attention?
Can be verses.
Yeah, sure.
تكاد السماوات يتفطرن منه تنشق الأرض وتخر الجبال هدا.
تكاد السماوات.
Can you do another one as well?
Yeah, sure.
عن لازم شو كم أهلكنا في
وكما أهلكنا
You
قبل.
want to see later why?
Sure. Thank you. حجمات تحب تشاركوا؟ أوكي، مفيش مشكلة. أيها. إلى الرحمن وفقا. Is there a keyword with the whole verse?
Just.
Okay. فردا. You negate in أي همة. Interesting. Thank you. عمرو. Great. It's a strong verse indeed. Faisal. Nothing. You came late. You don't know what's happening. So I was asking if there is a word or a phrase or a verse that really captured your attention as we were reciting. But we could come back to you later if you wish. Ali.
ونسوق المجرمين إلى جهنم وردا.
وردا. ونسوق المجرمين. جمال. وكم أهلكنا? The whole thing. Yeah, Yusuf.
I said
There is a space down. Yeah.
the repetition of the word كلا.
Kalla. Interesting. Would you like to share? Okay, well, you guys like al-halak? There's a lot of interest in halak. From the assistant's side, who wants to share something? Of course, there's no pressure, but I would love if everyone can participate. Lean, did anything capture your attention? Any word, phrase? Any specific thing? No problem. Who? Nadine? يتفطرن. Right? The whole verse. Okay. Thank you. Who else?
I would say, well, that's about there is no one in the heavens or earth who will not come to the Lord mercy as a servant.
وكل is it in كل ما في السماوات الرحمن عبدا? Is there a specific word? Okay. أضاء أحصاهم وعدهم عدا. Other suggestions or thoughts? Ibrahim, do you have any thoughts? Do you have any thoughts? No words, no phrases, no verses? Huh? Do you have any thoughts? No. Okay. Other voices? Is that everyone? Okay. These are some amazing choices, amazing, verses to capture our attention indeed. For me, just to keep it in mind, what I really had is ليكونوا لهم عزة. And I also had فردا. The reason this one captured my attention, I will come to everyone's ideas on these. واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة ليكونوا لهم عزة. So the Quran is telling us that these people, they have taken besides Allah their own specific gods by way of trying to find security for themselves. The word izz could mean security, could mean strength, could mean power. But in Arabic, originally, when we say someone تعزز بكذا, تعزز فلان بكذا, it means they have really found their own security in that person or that thing. They think they are secure because they have money, they have power, they have whatever they may have. status in society, positions, wealth, whatever they may have. So you find, the human being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the human being, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ خُلِقَ هَلُوعًا. The human being has been created in a state of anxiety and insecurity. When you are created in that state, what happens? You always try to find things that will provide you with security. Because you have been created as halua. The word halua. If you look at, it's a verse in Surah Al-Ma'arij. It literally says, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ خُلِقَ هَلُوعًا. The human being has been created in a state of hala. And hala literally means someone is always anxious. Actually, sometimes when things are really going so smoothly with us and for us, you dig deeper so that you may find something that disturbs your peace. That's us humans. Haven't you experienced that yourself? Like things are going calm, and you're fine, and you're happy. But because it's part of our nature, you try to even think about situations that haven't happened yet. What if this happened? What if this friend, betrayed me? What if this? So you start with the questions of what if? If things as they are working for you. So this is literally speaks to our own nature. And halwa is someone who doesn't have security, who is not secure. Allah is telling us that this is the nature of the human being, halwa. And the halwa will always try to find izz. Izz is security. Right? كل شخص هلوع يبحث عن التعزز, to find security. And if you look at the whole world, the only security we may have is with Allah. You can't have security without Allah. Because literally anything in this world can betray you. Your wealth can betray you, your health can betray you, your position can betray you, your status can betray you. There is nothing that is secure. That's why Ibrahim alayhi salam says to his people in Surah Al-An'am, وَكَيْفَ أَخَافُ مَا أَشْرَكُوا فَأَيُّ الْفَرِيقَيْنِ أَحَقُّ بِالْأَمْنِ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Who is more secure? And he uses this word, security, literally. Ibrahim alayhi salam says to his people, أَيُّ الْفَرِيقَيْنِ أَحَقُّ بِالْأَمْنِ. Who is more worthy of being secure? Is it the one who have faith in Allah, who have faith in one God? That's as we said before, every credo element, every aspect of Tawheed, every aspect of Islamic theology has a fruit to it. Listen to this, this is very, very important. Every theological item, every aqidah in Islam has a fruit to it. The fruit of Tawheed is tawakkul. The fruit of having a belief in the unity of Allah, the belief in monotheism, that there is one God who does things. When you have this conviction, the fruit of it is tawakkul, that you have trust, and you have peace, and you have security. If you lose, if your tawheed does not provide you with tawakkul, then you have a problem with your tawheed. So it has to produce fruits. If it doesn't produce fruits, then again, it means there is something wrong with it. Operators, did you have a question? Oh. Yeah. No. No. That's a very important question. What's your name? Mu'adh. Mu'adh is asking, in that verse that I mentioned, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ خُلِقَ هَلُوعًا in Surah Al-Ma'arij, the verse after that says that there are certain people who do specific things. Allah will help them so that they may escape from this hala. The Quran names إِلَّا الْمُصَلِّينَ, the people who are committed to prayer. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَاتِهِمْ دَائِمُونَ, they are literally committed to this prayer. And then the Quran counts, I think, 9 types of people who practice those things. With those things, they flee from hala. They can't escape this hala. Absolutely. That's why religion matters. Islam matters because it helps us escape this state of hala. Tawheed definitely does this. So, وَاتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً لِيَكُونُوا لَهُمْ عِزًّا. To me, something that we need to always practice, really, we need to all practice is something that is called in the Islamic tradition at-tajreed. At-tajreed. What does at-tajreed mean? At-tajreed means the capacity to abstractify. The capacity to abstractify. What does that mean? When you look at the Quran, your mind always thinks of specific times, specific places. So when I recite this verse to you, وَاتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً لِيَكُونُوا لَهُمْ عِزًّا, what comes to your mind is simply the disbelievers of Makkah, the idols, these things. Abstraction helps you take the idea out of those manifestations and try and find if you have the same stuff in your life. Because sometimes we can draw walls between us and barriers between us and the Quran. If we miss this point of abstraction. Because we ourselves, we commit this mistake. It's still with us, still lives with us. وَاتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً لِيَكُونُوا لَهُمْ عِزًّا. We will find gods in our lives. Be it a position, be it a social status that might prevent you from speaking truth to power. Be it someone that you love so much that you can't really give them a piece of advice that you believe prevent you from being honest with that person. Be it a family that is giving you a hard time, or you too committed to your family that you really, we can have so many gods in our lives that really stop us from being muwahhidun, or being real monotheists, real believers in Allah. So our mind should not attach the alihah just to the idols that the people had in Makkah. The word God and the word Lord applies literally to everything that we take, that we attach ourselves to. The Quran does this. It says, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you seen the one who took as his Lord his own low desires? So the Quran calls this ilah. That means the Quranic idea of an ilah is not just the idol. It's actually anything that you have in your life that you are attached to, which prevents you from really thinking clearly about that thing. So for me, this word, the word izzah, captured my attention simply because of that. I find it really relevant to us, lives with us in our lives, and speaks to our own needs. We are always in a state of hala. We need things that stabilize our anxiety and that. So what happens? You might lie actually, maybe in a job interview or something. You lie not to get a job, perhaps. You might do things that that go against your own integrity because you are trying to escape that sense of insecurity. Hala. Allah doesn't want us to be like that, right? And then the Quran actually tells us, سَيَكْفُرُونَ بِعِبَادَتِهِمْ وَيَكُونُونَ عَلَيْهِمْ ضِدًّا. What happens to them is that these things that they have taken as idols will turn against them. Look at this. This in our lives, wallahi, we have so many examples of this. I'm pretty sure everyone can tell stories. Something that you lied about, thinking that your salvation is in this thing, and because you lied, it turns out to be something against you. It does happen. And actually, it happens all the time. Allah is telling us that every single thing that you would attach yourself to deeply will turn against you. It's just a matter of time. So I find this very striking, and that it's very relevant to us. And that's again, when we think of the Quran, you need to draw on it by way of asking myself, what does that have to do with me? And I mentioned that I always mention the nasiha that Muhammad received from his father. He said, I had a piece of advice from my father that really changed my life and changed how I relate to the Quran. Muhammad is a famous Muslim philosopher who died in 1938. He said, my father, whenever he comes home, he would find me reciting the Quran, but he asked me, what are you doing? I would say, I'm reading Quran. Every time he comes in, he asks, I say the same thing. But he doesn't see much change in my thinking. He doesn't see much change in my attitude. He said, يا بني إذا قرأت القرآن فاقرأه كأنما أنزل عليك. If you come to read the Quran, read it as if it was revealed to you. If I am to read this verse like this, what happens? What should I act in this? If I'm taking this advice seriously. If Allah is saying, وَاتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً لِيَكُونُوا لَهُمْ عِزًّا, I need to reflect on myself. I need to consider myself being that person who is doing that. Do I have idols in my life around me? Am I too attached to something that makes me willing to compromise my principles because of it? Apply this across the board. You will definitely relate differently to the Quran. So that for me, that was, maybe I'll share this thing later on. So this was the verse that captured my attention in this passage. And I would want, if you feel comfy, to share with me why you picked that specific word or specific verse briefly, 1 minute or so.
So I chose this one because I've always had questions about it, and it translates in translation, translates as power. I believe it's not really that, in a sense.
The word shafa'a.
Shafa'a. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it translates into power.
Are you sure? I think it translates as intercession.
Does it?
Shafa'a is intercede.
In the translation you read, was it intercede?
Yeah.
Okay, my mistake then.
No, it's intercede. Power to intercede.
Power to intercede.
Yeah.
So, but I've always had a question about it, as in, it's always been controversial, even with Sayyidina Muhammad, whether this is a real thing. So I always wanted to understand what would be the difference, and in this context, it's not related to Sayyidina Muhammad. It's related to.
Okay, that's a very important question indeed. The concept of shafa'a is simply to have someone who helps you on the day of judgment. There is one of the key areas of Islamic theology is whether we will have people who can intercede for us, who can somehow help us with Allah, so to speak. Shafa'a is one of those areas, as you said, they are quite controversial. You have people who believe in them, that there are specific prophets who will have that capacity to intercede for us before Allah. If we look at the Quran, what does it have to say on the subject of shafa'a? And a little on the differences that scholars have. You have verses in the Quran that say there is shafa'a. And you have verses in the Quran that say, no, there is no shafa'a. And you have verses that are not very clear. I want you to have some sort of direct engagement with the Quran on your own. If we look at, for example, if you open Surah Al-Zumar, chapter number 39, verse number 19. Verse number 19 in chapter number 39. The verse actually says, أَفَمَنْ حَقَّ عَلَيْهِ كَلْمَةُ الْعَذَابِ أَفَأَنْتَ تُنْقِذُ مَنْ فِي النَّارِ. What about the one who has been sentenced to punishment? Can you, Muhammad, rescue those already in the fire? The verse, as if the verse is saying, no one has that capacity with Allah. Right? If you look at chapter number 34, Surah Saba, Surah Saba, verse number 23. 23 says, وَلَا تَنْفَعُ الشَّفَاعَةُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا لِمَنْ أَذِنَ لَهُ. Intercession will not work with him, except by those to whom he gives permission. Right? Um, we always read Surah Ayat al-Kursi, which says, وَلَا مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. You know, who can intercede with Allah except with Allah's permission? But we've just seen another verse that says, no, there is no one who can really save anyone from hell if someone has been sentenced to hell. And there are other verses in the Quran that give literally various, indications. I'm being reminded of another verse. There are other verses that would say otherwise. The point I'm trying to make is scholars. Alaykum assalam.
I did timetable for Ramadan.
We have in WhatsApp. Do you live in Bath?
Yeah, we have.
Okay. We can give you. You can join our WhatsApp group where we share the documents on that.
If I leave my number,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, please. So,
sorry, I'm so sorry.
yeah, no worries. So when you have cases like this, when the Quran speaks of a specific subject in this way, you have some references in the Quran that say something, and other references that say something different. Scholars have disagreements. That's a fact since day one Islam. What happens is that you might have scholars who would prioritize specific verses, and they would read the other verses in the light of this verse. Let me give you an example. You might have scholars who would say, I'll go with the verses that say there is shafa'ah, and I will find an interpretation to the ones that say there is no shafa'ah. This verse in Surah Al Imran, which says, منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخرى متشابهات, that there are verses in the Quran that are decisive and clear, and other verses that are not decisive. So they would take specific verses as being decisive. Perhaps here would be the people who believe in Shafa'ah, and they would think the other verses are not decisive enough, so I would read them in the light of the other one. Right? Maybe I'd say the context here is different. We would find various interpretations. This applies across the board, not just to this subject, with other subjects. And that tells us that the Quran sometimes is not easy. As in, sometimes the Quran is very easy in terms of reflection, in terms of drawing spiritual insights, absolutely. But when you come to draw theology from the Quran, that's a really tough subject. Theology, I mean stuff like these ones. What is going to happen on the Day of Judgment? Allah knows. Can someone intercede? When it comes to these discussions, what I'm trying to do with you here is just to give you an idea of what happens. Like, what do we do? Like, so in this very case, and the same thing with hadith. You have hadiths that say shafa'ah is possible. Other hadiths that would say no, the shafa'ah is not possible. These things happen normally on stuff that are not essential to the Islamic tradition. You can't find this happening on primary things like monotheism or something, like the more primary stuff. That. I hope this helps.
Is it maybe rhetorical in this?
Could be.
Because
Now we're trying to to find a position amongst those. It's fine. That's us. That's us. I have no interest in advancing a specific interpretation. What I'm interested in is just getting to understand what happens. How do scholars differ? They differ because the Quran is not always clear. Because the Quran says, منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخرى متشابهات. There are verses that are clear cut and others that are not as clear. And this is for a reason. Allah does nothing randomly. Right? Maybe you can discuss this at a later point. Why is the Quran like that? So in this case, again, you have verses that say different things on the subject. But it's a very important subject, though. We have the famous Egyptian medical doctor and philosopher, I'd say, Mustafa Mahmoud. Dr. Mustafa Mahmoud, Allah yarham. It's a big name. And he had, when I was growing up, I remember he had a book on Shafa'a. The title of the book, I'm trying to, محاولة في فهم الشفاعة. The title of the book is an attempt to understand a Shafa'a. And the reason he wrote the book, he says, is simply he wanted to see how do I reconcile those diverse verses and that. Many people accuse them of various things. Really a scholar, you're a scientist, you're a physician, and then that's a long list of accusations. He's a very deep thinker. I have much respect for him. The point is, with these subjects, one needs to understand what is the essence. Why do they differ? Simply because the Quran is not very clear on those subjects, on this subject, and maybe in similar subjects. Again, for a good reason, we can discuss this at a later point. Ash-Shafa'a is one of those areas. I hope this helps. Ahmed.
The verse first attached to the Quran is saying this after they say that Allah had offspring or a son. So usually we humans, like, we see the heavens and the mountains more like bigger than us, beyond us, things. So whenever you read this and you see, like, only when they accuse Allah of something like this, the heavens and the skies and the mountains and the earth is like shaking. Like, it's beyond impossible. Like, if only them saying that this will happen, how can it be possible for Allah to have a son? So I don't know, it's surprising.
So you find that emphasis.
The greatness of Allah.
Absolutely. The Quran, subhanAllah, speaks of this phenomenon as, with us as humans when we come to read the Quran. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل. The mountains are so solid and so strong. And yet, Allah is telling us, if the Quran was revealed to a mountain, it would, be reduced to pieces. But we just read, we don't reflect, we don't get transformed because we don't engage. And in these methods that we're trying to use in this circle is trying to get us to engage with the Quran, to appreciate its beauty, to appreciate its subtlety and its the uniqueness of its language. كم أهلكنا؟
Second, as you said in the beginning, the Surah is talking to Prophet ﷺ to give him a bit to help him through what he's going with, and he gave him many stories in Surah Maryam. But at the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, like, you saw what all the prophets before you went through, and the people who were against him. Can you hear any of their whispers? So don't worry. How they were successful, you will be successful as well.
Brilliant. That's a brilliant reflection. Indeed, the fate of the previous generations, they ended up with what? You don't have to worry about your own destiny, about your own fate. We are there for you. Absolutely. Well, it's only natural that the surah ends with this comment. Thank you so much for this. Yeah. You had wafda.
I have another verse.
You want to replace it?
Sorry?
You want to replace it? You want to replace it with this one?
The phrase لا رحمن وفدا. First of all, معنى وفدا as علماء غريب اللغة say أو غريب القرآن. الوفد هو راكب, anyone who comes on camel. And this somewhat indicates, when used in this verse, indicates the high status that the pious people of piety will be at in the hereafter, being welcomed on similar to the status that people, the Arabs did when welcoming, for example, people on a camel.
So you're saying the usage of the word wafda, and that the word wafda means something who comes riding on a camel, which reflects the high status of that person. Interesting.
Secondly, to me, I think this verse is the المحكم in the description of the life of the hereafter.
Which one?
إلى الرحمن. And I read all the other verses about the gardens and the gardens in light of this. And to me, this is the Mahkam, and the others are the Masjid. In other words, this, I think, speaking of theology and the difficulty, I did have to think about it. And I think this is the Mahkam when it comes to the hereafter, to the life of the hereafter, to the life of the
What is muhkam about it? Muhkam, as we said, muhkam is decisive, mutashabih is indecisive. Muhkam is clear, mutashabih is unclear. Now,
to me, it's decisive. The human soul will meet its creator at the end of the path.
what does that have to do with Allah Rahmani Wafda?
As in, بمعنى إنه this is the status, or this is what happens in the
Oh, okay.
If you're wondering what's happening in the life after death,
Okay, interesting.
to me, it's not the gardens as such.
Okay,
Inma
but
gardens are a
being
description.
mukarramin, being dignified and in a high situation. Okay, good job.
And the state would be is meeting Allah. The description of the gardens is somewhat
Subjective.
and tries to somewhat simplify the situation for the people who can't perhaps abstract such ideas.
That's a beautiful reflection. That's a beautiful reflection indeed. You see, you've said something in the beginning. You said, this is to me the muhkam, which raises another very important discussion. That is, who gets to decide what a muhkam is and what a mutashabih is? And that's a really deep one. You have people who made all Islam unclear, and you have people who made all Islam very clear and decisive. The two ways are somehow skewed. And what this suggests is that we need to have conversations. We need to have conversations for us to really, maybe I have an interpretation of this verse, the verse that you've taken as muhkam. Listen to me, listen to what I have. I will listen to what you have. Have that spirit of engagement, that spirit of constructive conversation. We don't have those spaces. That's why Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, the great Imam, had this very, very, very important book. It's called Faisal التفرقة بين الإسلام والزندقة. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali wrote this book in the 5th century, mainly because of people having disagreements, and everyone says, this is my muhkam, but this ayah is mutashabih. And the other person would say, actually, it's the other way around. This is muhkam for me, but it is mutashabih for you, and it's endless. The only way we can get out of this is to have constructive discussions between scholars with respect and with a dignified manner. We've lost this, unfortunately. People, yes, Yusuf.
Yeah, just got a question. So when the brother said about the guardians being a subjective sort of description of like a dignified state for the people who can't abstract the idea of the dignified state. So when Allah, for example, describes the gardens in Surah Rahman, and then he said, "Women do him a jannatan," so there's different types of gardens. There's no doubt it's telling the truth.
Sure.
So how can you?
That's an amazing question. Thank you so much, Yusuf, for that. I get it.
I think, like I said, I use the dichotomy of Mahkam and Mutashabih because this is how scholars deal with verses that seem at first somewhat in disagreement with each other. And this, of course, would apply. The famous discussion usually on Mutashabih would be, for example, whether Allah has organs, for example, and some parts of some scholars thought so because of some ayahs. Some scholars thought otherwise because of other ayahs. And therefore, I'm trying to apply this way of interpretation in order just to organize the verses and give each verse its due. Because to me at least, I would go. It would be a long discussion to me to prove that this is Makkah in the first place. But what I'm trying to say, this has been used, in other.
That's true.
And I'd like to use it here.
Thank you so much, Sharif. Can I intervene here? I'm really pleased with discussing this. People in the past have discussed these, Muslim scholars have discussed these, is with tough discussions. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali has written this book for a good reason. As I said, it was a context of people accusing one another. You can imagine it's at almost the beginning of Islam, the first 5 centuries, people trying to grapple with the Quran, what it means, how do we understand this verse, how do we understand that verse. These were not easy discussions. You've had people who said what I have said, like Kazan, Ibn Sina, Al-Farabi, who would say, you know what, the Quranic references to paradise and hell should not be taken literally as such, but they refer to a specific type of punishment. They have not denied the punishment. They said, this is people's idea of what a punishment is. This is people's idea of what a paradise is. So the Quran is appealing to the human mind and the language it can understand. Otherwise, the Prophet had already said, Al-Jannatu fiha ma la aynu ra'at, wa la udhunun sami'at, wa la khatar ala qalbi bashar. That the paradise has what no eyes had seen, no ears had heard, and no mind could conceive of. So the people who say that they are not denying the Quran, they're actually saying the Quran appeals to the human capacity of processing things. We haven't seen paradise, we haven't seen hell. But what we know that Allah is truthful. Allah would not tell lies. If He tells us something, we need to believe in that. So they ended up believing, saying that these are subjective experiences in which Allah appeals to the human mind. Al-Ghazali says, no, you can't apply this. If Allah describes paradise in this way, it means it is in this way. If the Quran says, وَمِن دُونِهِمَا جَنَّتَانِ, that means there are 2 paradises in a specific way, designed in a specific way. Then after Al-Ghazali came a man with the name Ibn Rushd, known in English as Averroes. Averroes had written, you see, these books are books of methodology. They help us understand what is happening here. So Ghazali has written this book to try and organize the Muslim mind. Ibn Rushd wrote another book called Al-Kashf عن مناهج الأدلة. Ibn Rushd came like a couple of decades after Al-Ghazali, and he had written this book by way of responding to Al-Ghazali. He's saying to Al-Ghazali, you know what, this is not really, if you are rejecting this interpretation and you're saying that it is inaccurate and that you can't speak with the Quran in this way, in this book he somehow exposes the inconsistencies that Al-Ghazali had somehow in his narrative. What he is saying is actually there is a possibility that you can read the Quran in this way. Of course, Ibn Rushd died after Al-Ghazali. He hadn't seen him. Ibn Rushd he lived and grew up in Andalus, Muslim Spain. Al-Ghazali was in Iraq. This man died 590, and this man died 505. So they haven't seen each other. I wish they had. They would have come up with some amazing solutions to these difficult questions. And this literally tells us that as humans, we need to humble ourselves before Allah, before the book of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِهِ عِلْمًا. They can't really have full comprehension of Allah. Allah gives us indications and signs here and there, but we need to humble ourselves to the truth. And again, I'm liking the conversation that we had. It does reflect a question of methodology, which is very, very important. Thank you so much, Ayhan. Thank you so much, Yusuf. Ahmed.
So,
Yes.
Just to comment on your يكون له العزة.
No.
I had another comment
On my comment.
yes. which is you mentioned the Father Muhammad and his advice.
No.
I think in the context of Surah Maryam, and this is maybe a bit brave, maybe somewhat sticky.
So as if the previous one was not brave enough yet.
So I think this is somewhat a direct message to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Don't ever rely on the people around you to give you security. And I think it's only fair to think that every single verse in the Quran was somewhat directly يعني, speaking to the Prophet ﷺ, and he understood in a way that made these 13 years somewhat يعني, fascinating and mind-blowing in such a long and such a short time. So I think it's only fair to say that every verse had a direct message to the Prophet ﷺ. He somewhat that helped him be the person he is. And here, it's somewhat telling him, never ever take
No, we're not denying that at all. Definitely. The Prophet is the first recipient of the Quran. We can't deny that. But the mistake is to link it only to that generation. That means you are literally historicizing the Quran. You're saying the Quran is relevant to that age. It's not relevant to me, which is horrendous. I know you're not saying that, but what I'm saying is yes, I do take your point. The Prophet is the first recipient of the Quran, and this is actually referring to a specific people. Yes, but that speaks to his context. But I need to find my own context. Where am I here? The Prophet had his specific people that he needed to deal with. We have those people in our lives as well. That's where we need to abstractify. So definitely.
I meant like what the Quran said وَاتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِهِ آلِهَةً لِيَكُونُوا لَهُمْ عِزًّا. It's someone telling the Prophet, don't take آلهة. يعني وهذا حصل في آيات أخرى عندما خطب النبي as direct as ولا تشرك.
Again, we cannot deny that. We cannot deny that, and that is not what is at stake at all. What is at stake? How do I, as a Muslim who reads the Quran in the 21st century, what do I make of it? But definitely, today's Quran is as important as historical Quran. I need to understand the context. But when I come to understand the context, I need to abstractify and I need to understand what is at stake here. Is the problem having idols? Or is it having an idea? People, someone might come to you and say, I don't really worship this idol. I worship Allah. It's just my room. Can you call this man a kafir? You can't call that man a kafir. It's the attachment that you had to this idol. And if attachment is what is at stake, then I can reflect this on me and see how that is relevant to me. That's how we may, engage the Quran in our lives. Otherwise, it's no way. I mean, we literally نعطل القرآن. We just keep it to a specific generation, which is not what any Muslim would want, surely. But thank you, of course. It's an important observation. Ahmad.
Firstly, I mean, in fact, it's repeated twice. That's once at the start of the passage and once towards the end. This word, like coming to us alone. And it's we spoke just now about the shaitan, and the fact that you can have someone sort of to support you on the day of judgment. It also mentioned, it says about this shaitan, they won't have sort of anyone to deceive them on the day of judgment. So there's sort of this idea of being alone, coming alone to God, and you don't have someone to support you on the day of judgment.
That's a beautiful reflection, Ahmad. Indeed. Coming alone. Yes.
The idea of you mentioned the negation of Abrahams, the idea of a group. It speaks a lot about the groups coming in gathering up the believers together, and it's the idea of the groups and then the alone part, this negation that you mentioned. It's quite interesting. Even though you belong to a certain group, you're still sort of you're alone, you're doing everything. So you're coming alone with your you don't have someone to support you.
Beautifully, Ahmad. Beautiful. The idea of the individuality, we come to Allah alone. And Ahmad says it's repeated twice in the last passage, in the passage that we just recited. كلهم آتيه يوم القيامة فردا, and they will all come to Allah alone on the day of judgment. That's we come as individuals simply because these people, they thought by gathering people with us, by finding securities, by finding this, these things will come with us on the day of judgment. Allah is saying no. These things won't benefit you. You will come alone. And when you come alone, Nothing will be of benefit to you. لا يملكون الشفاعة إلا من اتخذ عند الرحمن عهدا. And in this as well, on this, if you remember the discussions we've had since the beginning of the surah, Zakaria alayhi salam was an individual who had a difficult situation that goes against the norms of the community. A man who's advanced in age, getting a son. Maryam alayhi salam, the same thing. That situation where she comes to her family, to her people as an individual who's facing stigmas in the society. Ibrahim alayhi salam, who stands alone against his community. Though all these prophets, you see that the sense of individuality is somehow embedded into the surah. These people, you see, that's another thing the surah looks at. Actually, I remember this as we were talking. The authority of popular opinion. That's a big idol. That is a big idol that we still have up to this very moment. How many times did we, stop from saying the truth? Mainly, something that we believe to be truth, because it goes against public opinion, the public perception. That remains a big thing. Zakaria had that situation. Maryam had that situation. Isa had that situation. Ibrahim, Ismail, Musa, all those people. Allah is telling us that is something we need to stay with us, as we will all go back to Allah alone. If you come into Allah alone, you need to really understand that the public opinion won't really help you with anything. You can't come to Allah and you say, I believed in this because the vast majority of people believed in it. To Allah, this is not acceptable. Actually, the Quran says you have to be cautious with stuff that are believed by the public mind. وَإِن تُطِعْ أَكْثَرَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّوكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. If you are someone who just follows the crowd, they will. The Quran says, emphasizing, they will definitely mislead you. Surah Maryam teaches us individuality, that as we will come to Allah individuals, don't be afraid of taking individual positions as long as they are based on knowledge, they are based on hikmah. We've seen this hikmah, we had this conversation when we covered the passage with Ibrahim alayhi salam, his conversation with his father, Ya Abati, with this adab, with this etiquette and manners. But he did not, shrink from facing a public opinion, going against the public trend. These are difficult things. Just think of it within your own context. How many times did you stop and did you, of course, these things have to be done with hikmah, with knowledge, with wisdom. Don't be stupid, don't be foolish, definitely. But at the very same time, don't be someone who just succumbs to everything, believes anything, and have no. The Prophet ﷺ says, لا يكن أحدكم إمعا. Let none of you be a nobody, in the sense that you just follow. In أحسن الناس وأحسنت وإن أساءوا أسأت. That you follow people in whatever they do. If it's good, you follow. If it's bad, you follow. The Prophet is teaching us a sort of individuality as well. You are in charge of your own personality. Surah Maryam teaches us the idea of individuality. And it's not just about the day of judgment, it's also about the day of the here. We've seen this with Zakaria, we've seen that concern with Zakaria saying, what can I say to the people? They stated this very clearly. Maryam says, okay, يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا. She's having this in the back of her mind. What do I say? Right? A sense of moral courage is very much needed. Thank you so much for that. Amr. ونسوق المجرمين. Oh, okay. Thank you. Ali, did you have any?
God is saying we will drive the disbelievers into hellfire like thirsty like a herd. Of course, we don't know what the disbelievers are going to live like going to hellfire. God is giving us a description.
Interesting. It's a very vivid description. The thing about the Quranic descriptions, whether you take them literally or you take them metaphorically, they would always strike you as a strong thing, as a you know. وَنَسُوقُ الْمُجْرِمِينَ إِلَى جَهَنَّمَ وِرْدًا. How powerful this verse is. Thank you so much, Ali. Yeah, Jamal.
I chose the last verse because it kind of sums up the entire chapter.
Thank you so much. This is someone who attends regularly the Quran. Indeed, it does.
It concludes the surah and it reassures the Prophet that he's not alone and that he will. It's just not alone.
Absolutely. Definitely. The last verse. There's something if you come to study Quranic studies, more particularly, there's something called the ring composition. Ring composition. This ring composition is literally about this phenomenon. The surah begins with something and ends with a conclusion to do with this very thing. And this, across the Quran, it gets confirmed. Yeah. It just takes an insightful mind to reflect on the Quran, to really think the beginning of the chapter to its end, actually the middle as well. Thank you so much. We have Ahsan. Who said Ahsan? Yes. No. Are you asking if this is a question? I'm asking, is there any difference between أحصاهم وعدهم? Oh, interesting. Is there any, is this related to the next ayah? Wonderful. That's a really good question. أحصاهم وعدهم أحصى is literally to have a full comprehension and a full account of something. Ahsa is to have a full comprehension, to have a holistic comprehension of something. Adda is to have an animistic understanding of something. You count it one by one. Ahsa is to have it as a whole. Ahsahum wa addahum adda. Does this make sense? Okay. وكلهم آتيه يوم القيامة فردا. That again refers to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, because they have been counted one by one, they will come one by one. Part of Allah's justice, the divine justice, is to look at every individual's case one by one. Allah would not treat nations as a whole, because those nations, they are not all alike in terms of the reaction to the divine revelation. So it's only natural and only in line with Allah's divine wisdom, divine justice, that He treats them one by one because He knows them as one by one. This makes sense. Do we have any other words or choices? Shall I pick? Okay, are we done then? I mean, if there are any other words or phrases, otherwise we're done.
Oh, yeah, no, I thought you were going around asking people to explain the phrases, but...
Yeah, so we're done,
yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. It was an amazing discussion. And I particularly liked, yes, you.
Yeah, I've just got a question. I'm sorry, I can't get over the Ibn Sina and Rosh discussion. Because we talked about the so So yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I understand is that the vast majority of scholars at the time disagreed with Ibn Sina and the others, and if not, regarded them as deviants. So
deviance is a big word.
Yes, some did,
Some did,
not
yes.
all of them. But so, does that mean, can we consider their opinions as another valid opinion, or do we disregard it as well?
That's another very, very good question. We're talking about giants. We're talking about Ibn Sina. We're talking about Ibn Rushd, who was Qadi al-Qadha, Sheikh. He's called Shaykh al-Jama'ah, as in this big man. I find it really, really audacious. For me, someone who lives in the 21st century, says that Ibn Rushd was a deviant. So, why? So I think the people who do that, they're not mature enough. And we have too many of those people. You may disagree. Okay, you may say this makes more sense to me. Okay, happy. But we as Muslims reflect the Quran, read the Quran, see what makes sense for you. In the light of the entire message of the Quran. The message its entirety is not conflicting. The Quran is far from being conflicted or conflicting. No way. That's what matters. These details, really open to discussion. Simply because we know Allah, we haven't seen the unseen. There will come a time we'll have a better perception of it, maybe, inshallah. But something I would advise against is again, thank you for raising this issue. It's a very important thing, and we live it today. You have a very vivid discussion today amongst Muslims, especially those who know something about Islamic studies. Always debates between Ibn Taymiyyah, Ghazali, who's right, who's wrong, Ibn Qayyim, Nawawi. You have people who easily accuse scholars who spend their lives studying this tradition, and we haven't even, sat and studied for a couple of years. So, what we can do with those disagreements, one needs to seek knowledge, try as much as possible to enlighten your mind. Side with whatever you want to do. Side with, or choose the answer, the interpretation that makes sense to you. But why should I accuse someone else's religious deviance? It's my journey. But again, these are very, very important questions. And I'm glad I have raised it, Yusuf, you raised it, because these are very vivid, very lively questions. These are not dead questions. Yes?
I have a question that's a bit different. But you said that every aqidah has a fruit, and you said that Tawheed, the fruit of Tawheed. Are there any other fruits of other aqidahs that you know?
That's a wonderful question. I'm writing an article on this subject, the fruits of aqidah, the fruits of the roots of Islam, as in aqidah is the root of the Islamic tradition. Those roots, if I say I believe in Allah, the Day of Judgment, I believe in the angels, I believe in the books, and these things, they must have fruits. Maybe, inshallah, if you're around next week, we can possibly discuss these fruits, so to speak, of Islamic theology. Thank you so much, and inshallah we'll meet next week around this time.
مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني